Yung chapter 2 natin class ay typical account titles use. So sabi ko sa inyo ito yung importante kasi dapat alam nyo muna yung mga account titles, hindi yung nature niya tsaka kung kailan sila gagamitin. So alam nyo din yung classification nila kung asset, liabilities or equity. So kasi after nun, kapag alam mo yung account titles, alam mo din yung classification niya, susunod lang doon kung i-analyze mo kung nag-increase or nag-decrease. After nun, doon pa lang natin lalagyan ng debit and credit. Kasi sabi ko nga sa inyo, kahit alam niyo yung rules of debit and credit, kung hindi mo alam yung account titles na affected, baliwala, hindi ka makaka-record ng tama. Hindi ka makakapag-journal ng tama. Pero kung alam mo yung account titles, pero hindi mo alam kung yung classification niya, kung asset, liability, or equity siya, baliwala din kahit alam mo yung rules of debit and credit. Kung alam mo naman yung account titles, alam mo yung classification nila, pero hindi mo alam kung nag-increase or nag-decrease, tas alam mo yung debit and credit, baliwala din. So, dapat kasi lahat alam mo sila. So, ngayon, yung account titles, dapat alam mo anong accounts yung affected. At least 2 accounts yung affected in every transaction. Then, alam mo i-classify kung asset, liability, or equity siya. Kasi yung increase-decrease naman, madali naman siyang i-analyze pagdating doon sa transaction. Tapos, doon lang natin lalagyan ng rules of debit and credit. Diba yung example ko nga sa inyo dati, doon sa online natin, let's say, sabi natin, the company purchase supplies 50,000 on cash. So, anong accounts yung affected? So, at least 2 accounts. So, supplies, tsaka cash. Nandun naman sa transaction mismo. So, yung supplies, so ano ba yung supplies? So, yan, madidiscuss natin yan. Ano ba yung cash? Madidiscuss natin ano yung nature nila. So, kung alam mo yung supplies, alam mong cash yung affected, so ano yung classification nila? Ang supplies ay asset, ang cash ay asset. Nag-increase or nag-decrease, paano natin malalaman kung nag-increase or nag-decrease lang? So, kung nadagdagan or nabawasan, sabi lang natin, lagi kayo mag-a-analyze sa point of view ng entity. Nadagdagan ba sa point of view ng entity, o nadagdagan ba o nabawasan ba sa entity? So, sabi natin, the company purchase supplies. So, anong ginawa mo? Bumili ka supplies. So, ano nangyari sa supplies? Nadagdagan ba o nabawasan? So, nag-purchase ka, bumili ka, so ibig sabihin ng supplies ay nadagdagan. So, kung nadagdagan ng supplies, so, ano pa nangyari? So, nadagdagan ng supplies, kasi nag-purchase ka, binayaran mo ng cash. So, ano nangyari sa cash? So, nagbayad ka, so ang cash mo ay nabawasan. O, diba, sabi ko sa inyo, ano lang naman yan, common sense. Hindi naman pwedeng bumili ka, tapos ang supplies mo ay nabawasan. Or nagbayad ka tapos sasabihin mo ang cash mo nadagdagan. So bumili ka ng supplies, nadagdagan na supplies, nagbayad ka ng cash, nabawasan ng cash. So tapos after nun, dun pa lang yung rules of debit and credit. Pag ang asset nag-increase, debit. Pag ang asset nag-decrease, credit. Ang liabilities, kapag ang liabilities and equity, pag nag-increase, credit. Pag nag-decrease ang liabilities, ay debit. Ang equity, pareho lang sila, liabilities and equity. So, dyan, pag inano natin, ni-record natin kung debit or credit. So, una muna, ano accounts yung affected? Supplies. Anong classification niya? Asset. Nadagdagan, nabawasan, nadagdagan. So, kung nadagdagan yan, ang asset ay nadagdagan, debit. So, debit, supplies. Cash. So, ang cash ay asset din. So, anong nangyari sa cash mo? Nadagdagan, nabawasan. So, apply lang yung rules of debit and credit. So, ang asset, pag nadagdagan, debit, pag nabawasan, credit. So, ang cash, nabawasan. So, ang cash ay asset. So, kaya siya ay credit. Kaya ang entry, debit, supplies, and credit, cash. So, ganun lang siya. So, unang-una muna, dapat alam mo yung account title. So, isa-isahin naman natin yan. I-discuss natin yan isa-isa. So, una muna yung account titles ngayon. Pati classification. So, susunod kung nag-increase or nag-decrease. So, magbibigay ako ng transactions. Tapos, itingnan natin yung accounts na affected. Kaklasify natin kung asset, liability, equity, kung nag-increase or nag-decrease. After nun, doon natin i-discuss yung debit and credit. Kasi madali na lang yung debit and credit kung alam mo yung account titles and kung nag-increase or nag-decrease sila. So, ito muna tayo sa account titles muna. Kaya dapat alam mo na yung mga account titles. So, there are 5 elements of financial statements. So, assets, liabilities, equity, income or revenue, and expenses. Assets, liabilities, and equity are elements directly related to the measurement of financial position in the balance sheet. So, makikita nyo to sa balance sheet. BS or balance sheet. While income or revenue and expenses, elements related directly to the measurement of the financial performance in the income statement. So, ito naman ay financial performance. So, makikita naman yan sa IS or income statements. So, isa-isahin natin yan, yung elements of financial statements. So, assets, liabilities, equity sa balance sheet or sa financial position, while income or revenue and expenses. So, financial performance, income statement. So, yung unang i-discuss natin ay assets. Okay. So, pag sinabi natin assets, so assets are valuable resources owned by the entity. So, resources owned by the entity. So, yung mga pagmamayari ng entity, ang tawag natin doon ay assets. So, kunwari, yung building ay nirerentahan lang ng owner, no entity, yung building. So, hindi niya pag-aari yun. So, hindi natin yun makukonsider as an asset kasi hindi naman nila pag-aari. But, kung ang building ay binili nung owner para dun sa entity, so, ibig sabihin, yung building, makaklasify natin siya as an asset kasi pag-aari ng entity. Okay? So, ano yung mga examples ng assets? So, assets includes cash, cash equivalents, notes receivable, accounts receivables, inventories, prepaid expenses, property, plant and equipment, investments, intangibles, and other assets. Okay. So, yun yung mga examples ng assets. So, assets should be classified into two: current assets and non-current assets. So, unahin muna natin yung nasa current asset. So, pagdating sa current asset, ang tandaan ninyo, CFTIP. CFTIP. So, C for cash and cash equivalents. F for financial assets. T for trade and other receivables. And I for inventories. And P for prepaid expenses. Okay, so pag current asset, ang tatandaan ninyo CFTIP. Cash and cash equivalents, financial assets, trade and other receivables, inventories, and prepaid expenses. So, isa-isahin natin yan kung ano yung may encounter ninyo sa basic accounting. So, pag non-current asset naman, so NCA, ito pag sinabi natin NCA, non-current asset, pag sinabi kong CA, current asset. So, pag NCA naman, so, ang tandaan nyo naman ay LEO. 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 So, P for property, plant, and equipment. L for long-term investment. And I for intangibles. So, huwag magkakamali, mayroong I sa NCA, intangibles yun. Yung I sa CA ay inventories. And yung O, I for other non-current assets. So, tandaan, pag CA, CFT, cash and cash equivalents, financial assets, trade and other receivables, inventories, prepaid expenses. Pag non-current asset, PLIO, property, plant, and equipment, long-term investment, intangibles, and other non-current assets. So, ano yung mga ma-encounter lang natin pagdating sa basic accounting? So, ito lang, yung cash, tapos receivables, inventories, prepaid expenses, property, plant, and equipment. Okay? So, yung iba ay para na sa higher accounting. So, yan yung mga may encounter natin. So, but isa-isahin natin ano yung cash and cash equivalents, ano yung mga financial assets, trade and other receivables, inventories, prepaid expenses, property, plant, and equipment, long-term investment, intangibles, and other non-current asset. Okay, so pag sinabi muna pala natin current asset, so an entity shall classify assets as current when it expects to realize the asset or intends to sell or consume it in its normal operating cycle. It holds the asset primarily for the purpose of trading. It expects to realize the asset within 12 months after reporting period, or the asset is cash equivalent unless the asset is restricted from being exchanged or used to settle a liability for at least 12 months after the reporting period. So, yun yung natin para maklasify natin siya as current asset. So, pag hindi, all other assets should be classified as non-current assets. So, merong nasabi dyan na normal operating cycle. So, pag sinabi nating operating cycle, it is the time between the acquisition of assets from processing and the realization in cash or cash equivalents. So, when the entity's normal operating cycle is not clearly identifiable, it is assumed to be 12 months. Pag sinabi nating operating cycle, so from cash, na ibalik ulit siya sa cash. So once na nag-purchase ng materials or kunyari ay goods na ibenta, tapos na singil, na collect, so bumalik ulit sa cash. So ibig sabihin yun ay normal operating cycle. So kapag hindi sinabi kung ano yung normal operating cycle nila, so, ang i-assume natin, ang normal operating cycle ay 12 months. Okay, so 1 year yung normal operating cycle. Okay, so kaya pag sinabi natin current asset, usually kunyari, marirealize daw siya within 12 months after the reporting period. So, example, kunyari receivables. Pag sinabi natin receivable, ibig sabihin, pwedeng nag-render ka ng service, hindi ka binayaran ng customer mo, hindi ka pa pinabayaran ng customer mo. So, ibig sabihin, meron kang receivable. Okay? So, pag sinabi nating receivable, so meron accounts receivable and notes receivable. So, mamaya natin madidiscuss kung ano yun. Basta meron kang receivable, kapag meron kang nag-render ka ng service, hindi ka pa binayaran ng customer. So, paano natin siya i-classify as current asset or non-current asset? So, sabi natin, dapat ini-expect natin na marirealize siya within 12 months after reporting period. So, kunyari, ang reporting period natin ay December 31, 2020. Okay. So, let's say, nagkaroon ka ng nakabenta ka December 1, 2020. So, ang sabi nung customer mo, babayaran ka on December 31, 2021. Okay? So, yung receivable mo, makukolekta mo on December 31, 2021. So, itong December 31, 2020 natin, ito yung reporting period natin or yung balance sheet date natin. So, reporting period or balance sheet date. So, sabi natin dapat ma-realize daw within 12 months para ma-classify natin siya as current asset. So, ibig sabihin, yung receivable natin, let's say ang receivable natin ay 100,000. So, yung 100,000 na yan, kailan daw natin makukolekta? December 31, 2021. So, from the date of balance sheet date natin, December 31, 2020 to December 31, 2021. So, within 1 year, so ang classification niya ay current asset. Okay, so wala tayong sinabi kung ano yung normal operating cycle natin. So, ang i-assume natin, ang normal operating cycle natin ay 12 months. Kaya, ano yan, within 1 year, so ang classification ng receivable natin ay current asset. So, makikita mo yan sa financial position or do sa balance sheet, yung receivable nasa CA. But what if yung receivable natin na 100,000 ay babayaran December 31, 2022. So, yung 100,000 babayaran December 31, 2022. So, kailan ang reporting period natin? So, ang balance sheet date natin is December 31, 2020. So, kailan babayaran? December 31, 2022. So, it means more than 1 year na siya from the balance sheet date. So, ang classification ng 100,000 na natin ay magiging non-current asset. NCA siya kasi beyond 1 year. So, lagpas na doon sa 1 year. So, sabi natin, ang normal operating cycle natin hindi sinabi. So, ang i-assume natin ay 1 year yung normal operating cycle natin. So, sabi, pag current asset, dapat marirealize siya within normal operating cycle. So, ito, since beyond 1 year na, ang classification niya ay non-current asset. Okay, so, mailalagay din siya sa non-current asset. So, ganun lang yung pag-classify. So, but generally, yan yung laman ng CA natin tsaka NCA. So, kung walang ilalagay na period. So, kung amount lang, tapos pinaklasify sa inyo, wala namang nilagay na period. So, ayan, dyan, generally, ang cash and cash equivalents, financial assets, trade and other receivables, inventories, prepaid expenses ay CA. Ang non-current assets natin ay PPE, property, plant and equipment, long-term investment, intangibles, and other non-current asset. So, unahin natin yung cash. So, ito yung main counter natin pagdating sa basic accounting. So, cash is any medium of exchange that a bank will accept for deposit at face value. So, it includes coins, currency, checks, money orders, bank deposits, and drafts. So, kapag kunyari pumunta ka sa bangko, nagdala ka ng isang kabang bigas, sabi mo i-deposit mo siya. So, tatanggap yung ba ng bank? So, hindi. So, ibig sabihin, yung isang kabang bigas mo, hindi siya makaklassify as cash. So, sabi dyan, kapag in-accept ng bank for deposit, so, classified as cash. So, in a layman's term, pag sinabi natin cash, akala lang natin ay money, yung coins and currency. So, but it also includes, checks, money orders, bank deposits, and drafts. So, actually, yung cash natin, pwede natin i-classify sa tatlo. Merong cash on hand, cash in bank, and cash set aside for short-term purpose. So, but ang magagamit lang naman natin, once na mayroon tayong transaction, so, i-record lang natin siya as cash. Hindi nyo na kailangan i-classify kung cash on hand or cash in bank. So, pag cash on hand, ibig sabihin nyo nasa iyo. Pag cash in bank, nasa bangko. So, may mga cash set aside for short-term purpose like yung mga petty cash fund. So, recorded or classified as cash on. So, but sa atin, ang usual na ma-encounter nyo lang na cash ay cash as in money and checks. Kapag kunyari meron kayo nakita na checks. Kunyari, the company received 100,000 checks. So, yung checks na yun, yung cheque, recorded siya as cash. Pag sinabi naman natin cash equivalents, so, cash equivalents are short-term, highly liquid investment that are readily convertible to known amounts of cash and which are subject to an insignificant risk of changes in value. So, highly liquid investment siya. So, pahapyawan ko na lang din, pero hindi kayo makaka-encounter ng cash equivalents. So, pag sinabi natin cash equivalents, highly liquid investment. So, actually, yung investment na yan, pwede natin i-classify sa tatlo. So, yung cash equivalent, short-term investment, and long-term investment. So, ito yan. Kapag nilagay natin yan, yung itong financial assets na to, yan din yung short-term investment. Itong cash equivalents, ito, tsaka ito financial asset or short-term, ito yung short-term investment natin. Tsaka itong long-term investment. So, lahat sila investment. So, saan lang sila nakaiba pagdating sa term. So, usually, ang cash equivalents, ang term niya ay investment siya, na ang term ay 3 months or less. Kapag financial asset or short-term investment, so within 1 year, pag long-term investment, so investment siya more than 1 year. So, yung example kunyari ay time deposit. Okay? So, time deposit. So, na-encounter nyo na ba nadinig nyo na ba yan sa bangko? So, sabi mo, punta ka sa bank. Sabi mo, magta-time deposit po ako. So, ang sasabihin sa'yo. So, ibig sabihin ng time deposit, kapag dineposit mo yon, meron lang siyang months kung kailan mo siya pwedeng i-withdraw. So, let's say, meron kang 100,000. Sabi mo, ita-time deposit mo siya, 100,000. Okay. So, sabi mo kung ang term ay 3 months. So, yung 3 months na yan, yung 100,000 na yan, since ang term niya ay 3 months or less, ang classification niya ay cash equivalent. So, under pa rin siya ng current asset. So, cash equivalents. So, recorded pa rin siya as cash equivalents. So, what if yung 100,000, instead na ang term niya ay 3 months, let's say 6 months. Kunyari lang. So, 6 months. So, since ang term niya ay 6 months, ang classification niya na ay short-term investment. So, kasi pag sinabi natin short-term investment, kapag within 1 year. Okay? So, more than 3 months but within 1 year, ang classification niya na ay short-term investment. But what if yung 100,000, ang term niya ay 2 years, ibig sabihin, ma-withdraw mo siya after 2 years. So, ang classification niya na ay long-term investment. Okay? So, ganun lang siya. But, ito kasi, yung cash equivalents, financial assets and long-term investment ay for higher accounting na. So, hindi naman natin siya ma-encounter. Yan, cash equivalents and long-term investment. So, hindi natin siya ma-encounter sa basic accounting. Okay? So, ganun lang siya. Example pa ng mga investment dyan para ma-classify sila kung cash equivalents, short-term investment or long-term investment. Meron ding, bukod sa time deposit, ay meron ding money markets and yung mga treasury bonds. So, basta kapag ang term ay 3 months or less, classified sila as cash equivalents. But kapag more than 3 months but within 1 year, ang classification nila ay short-term investment. But kapag ang term ay more than 2 years, ay more than 1 year, so beyond 1 year, ang classification niya na ay long-term investment. So, titingnan nyo lang ulit doon sa financial sa date of balance sheet natin. So, yung balance sheet date natin, kapag beyond, okay, sa 1 year, beyond 1 year, after balance sheet date, so, ang classification nyo na ay long-term investment. So, or after balance sheet date natin ay 3 months or less than 3 months, so, ang classification nila ay cash equivalents. Kapag more than 3 months but within 1 year, ang classification niya ay short-term investment. So, ganun lang sila. So, ulit ko lang, hindi natin ma-encounter yung cash equivalents, short-term investment, and long-term investment. Ay trade and other receivables. So, receivables, pag sinabi natin receivables, sa atin, ma-encounter natin dalawa. Meron tayong accounts receivable and notes receivable. Okay. So, anong pinagkaiba ng accounts receivable and notes receivable? Ulitin natin, pag receivable, ibig sabihin ikaw yung makaka-receive. So, di ba sabi natin, kapag nag-analyze kayo ng transaction, laging sa point of view ng entity, ng company. So, ibig sabihin, yung entity yung makaka-receive. So, tayo yung makaka-receive. Okay, so ibig sabihin, pwedeng naka-render ka ng service, hindi ka binayaran ng customer, so ibig sabihin, meron kang receivable. O nag-deliver ka ng goods, pero hindi ka binayaran ng customer or ng client mo, so ibig sabihin, meron kang receivable. Okay, kasi yung receivable, kabaliktaran niya ay payable naman. So, payable. So, kabaliktaran nito ay payable. Okay? So, pag payable naman, ibig sabihin, ikaw naman yung may liability or may utang. So, kung kanina, pag receivable, so, ibig sabihin, ikaw si seller. Okay? Ikaw yung nagbenta. O ikaw yung nag-render ng service. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ikaw yung nag-render na service, hindi ka binayaran. Okay. O ikaw yung nagpautang. Okay. So, kapag payable, so ito, kapag payable naman, accounts, baliktad lang nila, payable, tsaka notes, payable. So, ito naman, ikaw naman yung may utang. So, ikaw yung may liability. So, ibig sabihin, ikaw naman si buyer. So, ikaw naman yung nangutang. So, ikaw yung naka-receive ng service, pero hindi ka pa nagbayad. So, ibig sabihin, meron kang payable. Or ikaw yung naka-receive ng goods, pero hindi ka pa nagbayad. So, ibig sabihin, ikaw ay si buyer. Okay? So, sa receivable and payable, maraming nagkakamali dyan. Laging nagpagbabaliktad. So, basta ang titingnan nyo muna, sino ba yung entity? Ikaw ba si seller or ikaw ba si buyer? Okay, kapag ikaw si seller, kunyari nakalagay doon, the company sold goods or merchandise 100,000. So, on account. So, on account, ayun, pag meron kayo nakitang on account, tatandaan, ito, on account, or on account, or on credit. On account or on credit, dalawa lang ang pagpipilian. Payable or receivable. Okay, so kapag meron kayo nakita sa transaction na merong ng on account or on credit, dalawa lang ang pagpipilian, payable or receivable. Kunyari, nakita nyo, sabi, kanina, the company sold merchandise worth 100,000 on account. Diba, meron ganon. Or kaya, the company bought supplies worth 50,000 on account. So, merong on account or kaya on credit. So, ang pagpipilian nyo lang, payable or receivable. So, paano natin malalaman kung payable or receivable siya? Kung ano i-record. Pag ikaw, i-record mo siya as receivable kapag ikaw si seller. I-record mo siya as payable kapag ikaw si buyer. Yung kanina, yung sa taas lang. Diba? So, sabi dun sa una, ano sabi natin kanina? The company sold the merchandise 100,000 on account. Okay, so ano sabi? The company sold. So, the company sold merchandise 100,000 on account. Ano nakita dyan? Meron kang on account. So, pag meron nakitang on account, dalawa lang pagpipilian. Payable or receivable. So, ano sabi natin? Tingnan mo kung ikaw si seller or si buyer. Pag ikaw si buyer, payable. Kapag ikaw si seller, receivable. So, dyan, ano sabi? Sabi natin, point of view lagi ng company yung titignan natin. So, the company sold. So, ibig sabihin, yung entity, yung company, yung nagbenta. So, sino ka dyan? So, ibig sabihin, ikaw si seller. So, anong i-record natin? So, yan ay recorded as receivable. Kasi meron kang nakitang on account. Tapos, ikaw si seller. Okay? So, but sabi, kanina, ito naman, the company bought 50,000 worth of supplies on credit. Okay. So, the company bought 50,000 supplies on credit. So, ano nakita? Merong on credit. So, pag may on credit or on account, dalawang pagpipilian, payable or receivable. Kapag ikaw si buyer, recorded as payable. Kapag ikaw si seller, recorded as receivable. So, dito, sabi, the company bought supplies on credit. So, on credit, payable or receivable. Ano sabi dyan? The company bought. So, ibig sabihin, yung entity yung bumili. Kung si entity yung bumili, so, ibig sabihin, ikaw yung entity ay si buyer. So, kung si buyer, ano i-record natin dyan? Payable. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung 50,000 na yan ay payable. So, ganun lang siya. Pag meron kayo nakita on account or on credit. So, dalawa lang pagpipilian, payable or receivable. Marami nagkakamali dyan, guys. Marami nalilito na pagpapalit. Basta merong on credit or on account sa transaction. So, ang pagpipilian ng payable or receivable. Anong titingnan? Kapag ikaw si buyer, payable. Kapag ikaw si seller, ay receivable. So, may mga clue naman dyan. Makita nyo naman kung sila si seller, kung yung entity ay si buyer. Ano yung difference ng accounts receivable and notes receivable? So, pag sinabi natin accounts receivable are claims against customers arising from sale of services or goods on credit o yung on account. This type of receivables offers less security than a promissory note. While notes receivable is a written pledge that the customer will pay the business a fixed amount of money on a certain date. So, kapag sinabi nating nakalagay lang on account or on credit, so, hindi sinabi na nag-issue ng promissory note yung customer or yung client, so, ibig sabihin, ang i-record natin na receivable ay accounts receivable. So, pag accounts receivable, ibig sabihin, verbal lang, na meron akong may utang sa atin yung customer or yung client. So, but wala tayong evidence na meron siyang utang. Okay, walang kasulatan. But kapag may kasulatan, so ang i-record natin or may promissory note, so ang i-record natin ay notes receivable. So kaya sabi dyan, notes receivable is a written pledge that the customer will pay the business a fixed amount of money on a certain date. So kunyari sabi ng customer, so meron siyang promissory note na may promissory note siya, kunyari nakagila, I promise to pay 100,000 on December 31, 2021. Okay, so ibig sabihin may promissory note. So ang i-record natin doon sa transaction ay notes receivable. So sabi dyan, kapag accounts receivable offers less security. Siyempre kasi wala kang evidence. Unlike na meron kang evidence, yung promissory note, so mas secured si seller. Ibig sabihin, may ebidensya siya na meron talaga siyang receivable kay customer or kay client kung merong promissory note. So, pag silent, nakita nyo lang on credit or on account, ibig sabihin, nilagay nyo lang on credit or on account. So, ang i-record natin ay accounts receivable. So, kapag merong nakalagay na nag-issue ng promissory note, so, i-record natin ay notes receivable. So, yun yung may encounter ninyo pagdating sa receivables, accounts receivable and notes receivable. So, sunod natin ay yung inventories. So, sa inventories, depende yan kung service, merchandising, or manufacturing. So, since service tayo, pag service, ang inventories na ma-encounter lang nyo ay supplies. Supplies na ginagamit natin for rendering services, okay, or service. Kapag merchandising, so pag merchandising naman, ang inventory na ma-encounter nyo naman ay yung goods kung ano yung binibenta natin. So ang tawag doon ay merchandise inventory. Okay. So kung ano yung goods na ibinibenta, let's say nabenta ka ng t-shirt, so yun yung goods natin, so yun yung merchandise inventory. Kapag manufacturing naman, ito, sa manufacturing, so diba ikaw yung nagagawa mismo ng product natin. So from raw materials, convert into final product. So tato yung inventories. So yung raw materials. So yung mga materials natin, let's say ikaw yung nagpo-produce ng t-shirt, from yung mga sunulit, so yun, raw materials yun. Pangalawa, ay meron tayong tinatawag na work in process. Ito yung mga materials nilagay sa process, but hindi pa sila na-complete. So, ang tawag ay work in process or goods in process. Yung pangatlo ay finished goods. So, ang finished goods naman, sila yung completed goods, but unsold, na tapos na. So, t-shirt na siya pero hindi pa siya naibebenta. So, ang tawag doon finished goods. So, yan yung tatlong inventories pagdating sa manufacturing. So, pag service, since ito lang yung i-discuss natin, so, makikita nyo lang na inventories natin ay supplies. So, ano ba yung definition ng inventories? Okay. So, sabi natin dyan, inventories are assets which are held for sale in the ordinary course of business, in the process of production for such sale, or in the form of materials or supplies to be consumed in the production process or in the rendering of services. So, sa atin, ang makikita lang o ma-encounter lang natin ay supplies. Supplies na ginagamit natin para makarender tayo ng service. Let's say, kunyari, sabi natin, yung beauty parlor. So, ano yung mga supplies natin doon? So, let's say, yung shampoo. So, yung pangkulay. So, ang tawag doon ay supplies. Okay? So, under siya ng inventories. Okay? So, gano'n lang siya. So, but usually, yun makita nyo lang. Kunyari, the company bought supplies. Gano'n lang. So, inventories yun. So, recorded siya as supplies. Na tayo sa cash. So, ito yung mga encounter natin cash. Receivables, accounts receivable, and notes receivable. Tapos, inventory. So, ang may encounter lang natin ay supplies. So, ang susunod, and last dun sa current asset ay prepaid expenses. Okay, so ano naman itong prepaid expense. So, prepaid expenses are expenses paid for by the business in advance. So, it is an asset because the business avoids having to pay cash in the future for a specific expense. So, this include insurance and rent. So, these prepaid items represent future economic benefits, assets, until the time start to contribute to the earning process. These then become expense. Sabi natin prepaid expense, asset account siya na eventually magiging expense. So, pag sinabi natin prepaid expense, so nag-advance payment, binayaran agad nung entity, pero hindi pa niya nagagamit. So, di ba kung natatandaan ninyo, pag sinabi natin dun sa basic principles, meron tayo dong expense recognition principle. So, expense should be recognized when goods or services and services are used up kapag nagamit na. So, ang prepaid expense, ibig sabihin, asset siya na binayaran mo in advance pero hindi mo pa siya nagagamit. Pero once na nagamit mo na siya, maire-record na siya as an expense. So, ano daw yung example? Prepaid rent. Okay? So, kunyari, nagbayad ka ng rent in advance. So, ang tawag doon, prepaid rent. Okay? So, yung iba ginagamit prepaid rent expense. So, sa akin mas gusto ko prepaid rent lang para hindi kayo malito. So, kapag ang advance payment ay para sa rent, so ang tawag ay prepaid rent. Kung ang advance payment ay para sa insurance, so ang tawag doon ay prepaid insurance. Kung ang payment ay in advance ay para sa tax, so ang tawag doon ay prepaid taxes or tax. Okay? So, ganun siya. So, ibig sabihin, pag sinabi natin prepaid, nag-advance ka ng payment. O parang di ba pag sinabi mo prepaid, yung load. So, ano ginagawa mo? Bibili ka ng 300 pesos. So, magbabayad ka agad. So, bibigyan ka ng card pero hindi mo pa siya nagagamit. So, ibig sabihin, prepaid load. So, hindi mo pa siya nagagamit, diba? So, binayaran mo agad siya pero hindi mo pa siya nagagamit. So, dito, ganun din. Pag sinabing prepaid, nagbayad ka in advance pero hindi pa natin siya nagagamit. So, ang tawag ng prepaid expense. So, kung rent yun, ang tawag ay prepaid rent. Kung insurance yung advance payment po, ang tawag ay prepaid insurance. Kung taxes yun, so ang tawag ay prepaid taxes. ABC Company, kunyari tayo yun. ABC Company paid 12,000 for 1 year rent in advance. So, in advance. Okay. So, let's say, ano yan, January 1, 2020. So, nagbayad tayo ng 12,000 for 1 year rent in advance. So, ibig sabihin, kung for 1 year yan, pang isang taon, yung 12,000 na yan ay para sa isang taon. So, ibig sabihin, ang renta natin kada buwan ay 1,000. Okay? So, pagdating ng January 1, 2020, ang ire-record natin yan, rent in advance. So, sabi natin, pag prepaid expense, expenses paid for by the business in advance. So, asset yan, hindi pa natin siya nagagamit. So, January 1, 2020, yan, i-record natin yung 12,000 na yan. Recorded siya as prepaid rent. Okay. January 1, 2020. So, kasi nagbayad ka ng January 1, recorded siya as prepaid rent. Recorded siya as an asset. So, hindi mo pa siya nagagamit. So, recorded siya as prepaid rent. Okay. So, 12,000. So, nagbayad ka in advance. But after a month, yan, 12,000 na yan, syempre, nagamit na natin yung isang buwan. So, ibig sabihin, mababawasan na to. So, after a month, yung prepaid rent natin, hindi na 12,000. Magkano na lang dapat ang prepaid rent natin? 11,000 na lang. Tama, kasi nabawasan na ng 1,000. So, after a month, pagdating ng January 1, di ba January 1 natin na yan binayad. So, January 31, nagamit na natin yung isang buwan. So, after a month, so January 31, nagamit na natin. itong 12,000 na to, ano na, sana mapupunta yan. Yung 1,000 na yan, i-record na natin as rent expense. Okay, so recorded na siya as rent expense. Yung 11,000, ayun, so nasaan pa rin siya? Nasa prepaid rent pa rin. Okay, so after a month, yung rent expense mo na 1,000. Tapos, ang prepaid mo na lang ay 11,000. Kasi, from 12,000, nabawasan ng 1,000. So, ang prepaid rent mo na lang is 11,000. So, yun yung sinasabi na asset account siya. Ito, asset siya. Nung nirecord natin, na eventually magiging expense. So, once na nagamit na, so, nagiging expense na siya. Okay? So, ayun yung prepaid rent. Ganun din sa pag-prepaid insurance. So, kapag nagbayad ka in advance, so recorded siya as prepaid insurance. Once na nag-expire na siya, na let's say 1 month, 2 months, so nababawasan na yung prepaid insurance. Sana napupunta, magiging insurance expense. Ganun din sa taxes. So, pag nag-advance payment ka for tax, so ang record ay prepaid taxes. Kapag nagamit na natin siya, so ang tawag na ay taxes expense or tax expense. So, asset siya na eventually magiging expense. So, dito marami nagkakamali. Kailan i-record siya as prepaid or as expense na? Basta pag expense na kapag nagamit na siya. So, makikita nyo naman kapag meron nakalagay rent in advance for 1 year, o hindi mo na pa magagamit agad yung 1 year na yan, so ibig sabihin yan ay prepaid rent. Pero kung nakita nyo lang nakalagay, paid rent, 10,000. Ayan lang. Ito lang. Paid rent, 10,000. So, walang nakalagay in advance. So, ibig sabihin, itong rent na to, recorded siya as rent expense. O, wala namang sinabing rent in advance or for 1 year. So, ibig sabihin, ay binayaran natin yung renta para sa buwan na yun or para sa taon na yun. So, recorded siya as rent expense. Okay. So, kaya lalagay paid for 10,000 for 1 month's rent. Nakaganon lang siya. So, ibig sabihin 1 month rent. So, ibig sabihin recorded siya as rent expense. Hindi siya prepaid expense. Kasi pag prepaid expense, rent in advance, hindi siya pa nagagamit. Okay. Binayaran mo agad pero hindi mo pa siya nagagamit. So, ang tawag dun ay prepaid expense. Meron din kasing kabaliktaran yung prepaid expense. Diyan, ikaw yung nagbayad in advance. So, meron naman accrued expense. Okay, so ano na may accrued expenses kabaliktaran? Ang prepaid expense, so nakabayad ka in advance. Ang accrued expense naman ay naka-receive ka ng service in advance pero hindi ka pa nagbabayad. No, basta yung pagdating sa accrued expense ay madi-discuss din natin. Baliktad nila sila. Basta una mo na basta ang tanda mo na is prepaid expense. Tayo yung nagbayad in advance pero hindi pa natin siya nagagamit. So, already paid but not yet consumed or used. Okay. So, yun yung prepaid expense. Sabihin, natapos na natin yung nasa CA. So, ano lang yung may encounter natin? Sa basic accounting, cash, receivables, inventories, and prepaid expenses. Pagdating sa non-current assets, so, PLIO, property, plant, and equipment, long-term investment, intangibles, and other non-current assets. So, actually, ito lang yung may encounter natin dyan. Property, plant, and equipment. So, ano ba yung PPE? Pag non-current asset, sabi natin, hindi siya current asset. So, ang realization ay beyond 1 year or normal operating cycle. So, non-current asset, property, plant, and equipment, long-term investment, intangibles, and other non-current asset. So, unahin natin yung PPE. Property, plant, and equipment are tangible assets that are held by an enterprise for use in the production or supply of goods or services, or for rental to others, or for administrative purposes, and which are expected to be used during more than one period. So, included are such items as land, building, machinery and equipment, furnitures, furniture and fixtures and motor vehicles. So, pag sinabi natin PPE, tangible asset siya. Pag sinabi natin tangible asset, nakikita, nahahawakan. Okay? So, that are held by an enterprise for use in the production of or supply of goods or services. So, yung ginagamit natin sa services natin, for rental to others or pinaparent natin, or for administrative purposes, ginagamit natin for admin purpose. So, ano yung mga examples? Land, building, machinery, and equipment, furniture and fixtures, and motor vehicles. So, class, tandaan nyo yung examples nila. Okay? So, pag sinabi nating land, yan ay property, plant, and equipment. Siya ay asset. Okay? So, under siya ng property, plant, and equipment. So, machinery, equipment, building, furniture and fixtures, and vehicles. So, yun yung mga examples ng PPE o property, plant, and equipment. So, sabi dyan, gagamitin siya for more than one period. Kaya siya non-current asset. So, wala naman tayong biniling land na sabi natin gagamitin lang natin within 1 year, diba? So, definitely for more than 1 year. Or building, gagamitin mo lang siya for 1 year. So, ang useful life niya lang or magagamit lang mo siya for 1 year, so wala namang ganun. So, kaya siya, ang classification niya ay non-current asset. Okay? So, basta property, plant, and equipment, ano yan? Land, building, machinery, equipment, furniture, and fixtures, and vehicles. So, yun ay asset sila. Under sila ng non-current asset. Okay? NCA siya. So, yung property, plant, and equipment ay subject for depreciation. Okay? So, ibig sabihin depreciation, yung na-discuss na natin, pag sinabi natin depreciation, decrease in value. So, parang diba, kunyari yung example, yung binigay kong example sa inyo nung online natin ay cellphone, pinili mo siya ngayon ng 20,000, after a year, yung cellphone mo, hindi na 20,000 yung value. So, pwedeng 15,000 na lang kasi nagamit mo na, naluma na siya, nag-depreciate na, bumaba na yung value niya. So, nagkaroon ng depreciation. Okay? So, ang property, plant, and equipment are subject for depreciation. So, except for land. Lahat yan nagde-depreciate. Yung building, machinery, equipment, furniture, and fixtures, and motor vehicles. Except for land. So, ang land, ang lupa, hindi siya nagde-depreciate. Diba? Habang tumatagal, yung lupa, nagtataas yung value niya, nag-a-appreciate siya. So, ang property, plant, and equipment ay subject for depreciation except for land. Okay? So, nagde-decrease yung value niya. So, ang tawag dun ay depreciation expense. Yung decrease in value. Building, nag-purchase lang tayo ng building. Let's say 12 million. Okay? So, binili mo yung building na 12 million. Sabi natin, ang useful life niya, magagamit mo siya for 12 years. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, every year, nagde-depreciate yung building natin ng 1 million. Paano nakuha yun? Yung cost, 12 million, divided by useful life. Ito yung useful life, divided by 12 years. So, ibig sabihin, 1 million, ito yung depreciation expense. Anyway, ito madidiscuss naman natin siya sa adjusting entry. So, example lang. So, ibig sabihin, yung depreciation expense natin 1 million, kada taon, bumababa yung value ng building natin. So, sabi natin, di ba, meron tayo historical cost. Ang building, mag-a-appear pa rin siya sa balance sheet at 12 million. Okay? So, pag nilagay mo yun sa balance sheet, 12 million pa rin siya. Okay? So, kunyari, January 1, 2020 natin sila binili, yung building. So, ibig sabihin, pagdating na December 31, so, December 31, 2020, hindi na, yung value niya, hindi na 12 million. Nabawasan na ng, 1 million. Kasi nagamit na natin siya ng isang taon. So, yung building, noong January 1, 2020, i-record mo siya as building. So, saan siya? Property, plant, and equipment. Recorded siya as an asset. Okay, so yun lang naman yun eh. Lalagay lang naman nung kunyari doon sa transaction, the company purchased building, 12 million. Kaya lang siya. So, ibig sabihin, recorded siya as building. Okay? But after a year, nag-depreciate na siya, December 31, 2020. So, hindi na, ang building, ang value niya na lang, hindi na 12 million, but 11 million. Tama? Kasi nabawasan na ng 1 million. So, ang tawag din sa 1 million, depreciation expense. So, sa balance sheet natin, sa financial position, ang mag-a-appear pa rin dyan, meron ka pa rin building, 12 million pa rin. Sabi nga natin, historical cost, diba? So, at saka stable monetary unit concept. So, at 12 million pa rin siya. Kaya lang dito, magkakaroon siya ng accumulated depreciation. So, ang accumulated depreciation, deduction. So, yung depreciation, magkano depreciation niya? For 1 year, 1 million. So, accumulated, ibig sabihin, sum. So, since 1 year pa lang yung nagamit, so, magkano pa lang? 1 million. So, 1 million. So, pag tinignan nyo yan sa balance sheet, so, deduction siya. So, ito, 11 million. Ano tawag dito sa 11 million? Ito yung net book value niya. Okay. So, but reflected pa rin siya at 12 million eh. Nagkaroon lang ng accumulated depreciation. So, magkano ang accumulated depreciation? 1 million. What if sa December 31, 2022, so, ay 2021, let's say 2021, so, ilang years na siya nag-depreciate? 2020, 2021, so 2 years na. So, ang building mo pa rin 12 million. Pero, ang accumulated depreciation mo na, hindi 1 million, but 2 million. Depreciation mo nung 2020, 1 million. Depreciation mo nung 2021, 1 million. So, pag sinabi accumulated sum ng depreciation, so 2 million. So, kaya ito, 12 million minus 2 million. So, ang lalabas, net book value niya na lang ay 10 million on December 31, 2021. So, ganun lang siya. Okay. So, ang tawag dun ay accumulated depreciation. Ang accumulated depreciation, reflected siya saan? Marirecord siya saan? Sa asset siya. Kaya lang tawag sa kanya ay contra asset. Okay. Yung depreciation expense, saan siya? Expense yan. May word na expense. So, expense yan. Hindi siya sa asset. So, but ang accumulated depreciation ay asset, but contra asset. Bakit siya tinawag na contra asset? Kasi siya ay deduction sa property, plant, and equipment. Kaya pag tinignan mo yung definition niya, accumulated depreciation is a contra account that contains the sum of the periodic depreciation charges. The balance in this account is deducted from the cost of the related asset, equipment, or buildings to obtain book value. Kaya ito yun, ang net book value niya ay 10 million. So, ang accumulated depreciation, tandaan ulit, ang accumulated depreciation, asset siya. Tawag nga lang sa kanya, contra asset kasi deduction siya. Okay, so yun yung accumulated depreciation. So, ang PPE, property, plant, and equipment ay subject for depreciation except for land. So, pag sinabi nating accumulated depreciation, contra asset siya. So, nasa asset kaya lang siya ay deduction. Okay, next ay intangibles. So, ano naman yung intangibles? So, itong intangibles, wala kayong ma-encounter nito. Tsaka yung other non-current asset. Pag sinabi naman natin intangible assets, so, assets are identifiable non-monetary assets without physical substance held for use in the production or supply of goods or services, for rental to others, or for administrative purposes. So, para siyang property, plant, and equipment, diba? Kaya lang pinakaiba, ang property, plant, and equipment ay tangible. So, ito ay intangible. So, ibig sabihin, hindi nakikita, hindi nahahawakan. So, this include goodwill, patents, copyrights, licenses, franchises, trademarks, brand names, secret processes, subscription lists, and non-competition agreements. So, yun yung mga examples ng intangible assets. So, ito ma-discuss to sa higher accounting na. So, sa basic accounting, wala tayong ma-encounter niyan. Okay, copyrights. Saan kayo nakakita ng copyrights? Diba sa mga pinapanood yung mga teleserye? Diba? Okay, so, diba meron kayo nakikita doon? Copyrights 2020. Kaya copyrights 2021. Sa libro. So, ang libro, diba may mga nakalagay doon copyrights 2019. So, ibig sabihin, yun yung right nung owner, nung author. So, Diba meron tinatawag intellectual property right. Kaya yung mga libro, diba, bawal i-photocopy. Kasi yun ay merong copyrights. Okay? Licenses, franchises, trademarks, brand names. So, brand names, ano ba yun? Jollibee, McDonald's, yung trademark nila, bubuyog. So, yun, ano yun, may, ano yun, tawag dito, binabayaran nila yun, yung trademarks na yun. So, nire-register yun. So, recorded yun as intangible asset. So, wala naman kayo nakita na bubuyog din na sapatos, diba? O kaya, Jollibee din yung pangalan, pero sapatos yung Jollibee. Yung ginagawa, yung, ang tawag dito, yung brand ng sapatos. So, wala. So, ibig sabihin, naka-register yun sa Jollibee. So, bawal gamitin ng iba kasi magkakaroon ng confusion sa public or sa mga customers. Okay? So, yun, yung mga yun, ang tawag natin doon ay intangible assets. Patents, kunyari naka-invento ka na electric pan na lumilipad. So, register mo yan na ikaw ay yung inventor. So, before nila na-produce yan, so dapat meron mo ng ano tawag dito, merong consent dun sa inventor bago nila i-reproduce. Okay? So, ang tawag dun ay patent. So, recorded din yun as an intangible asset. Okay? Yung other non-current asset, pag hindi mo man siya ma-classify, wala siya sa current asset, hindi siya property, plant, and equipment, long-term investment at intangibles. So, recorded siya as other non-current assets. So, but sa atin, sa basic accounting, wala naman kayong ma-encounter na other non-current asset. Ano lang yung ma-encounter natin dito? So, cash, receivables, accounts receivable, notes receivable, inventories, supplies, prepaid expenses, prepaid rent, prepaid insurance. Okay. So, property, plant, equipment, land, building, machinery, equipment, vehicles. So, yun lang yung may encounter natin. Okay, so sila ay, tatandaan nyo siya ay assets. So, pag assets, resources owned by the entity. So, may control yung entity, ibig sabihin sa kanya, pag-aari niya. Ang tawag doon ay asset. Okay, so, siya yung owner, siya yung may-ari. Ang tawag ay assets. Okay na tayo dito sa asset. Okay. So, class, kapag meron kayong question, kunyari hindi masyadong malinaw or nalilito, take down nyo na lang para pag nag-online tayo, tanong nyo. Kasi minsan nakakalimutan ko din, may nakakalimutan ako i-discuss pagdating dito sa video. So, nadi-discuss na lang natin dun sa online. So, pag nag-Google Meet na tayo. Okay, so take down nyo na lang. So, susunod is liabilities. So, liabilities, so ulitin ko lang, pag asset muna, resources owned by the entity. Pag liabilities kasi, pag sinabi nating liabilities,